It's been more than 12 hours since Iran laid its assassinated Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei to rest. The final rites have ended. Millions, including Iran's leadership, mourn the loss. And now the question for Iran is what lies ahead, politically, diplomatically, militarily, especially when it comes to the war and the negotiations. Remember, Iran and the U.S. are on edge after the latest round of strikes by the two sides. Iran's alleged attacks on ships in the Strait of Hormuz saw a response from the U.S. almost immediately. American forces struck several parts in Iran while Khamenei's last rites were underway in Iraq. Following the strikes, both sides trading threats. Trump, in fact, had declared that the memorandum of understanding with Iran is dead. The statement came in response to a question asked during the U.S. president's visit. Following the escalation in the last 2 days, in fact, negotiators are now scrambling to bring the parties back on the table for the talks. According to the latest developments, negotiators from Qatar are in Iran to de-escalate tensions and create conditions for broader negotiations to continue. The key objective basically is to make sure that the MOU signed by the US and Iran is implemented and the reasons behind the recent escalations are addressed. But for both the US and Iran, control over the Strait of Hormuz is the biggest point of contention, remember. Washington, along with its Gulf allies, pulling all stops to ensure Iran has minimal to zero control on the critical maritime passage. Tehran, on the other hand, treats Hormuz as its biggest bargaining chip. For months now, Iranian forces have mined the strait, attacked commercial vessels, reportedly reduced traffic through the waterway by an estimated 95% reportedly. And the result has been the biggest supply disruption in the history of the global oil market. Amid all of this, Israel remains ready to renew the war and join future US strikes, should Washington make that decision. For negotiators and for West Asia overall, it seems to be a race against time to avert fresh escalation. But can they succeed and do that is the question. And with us in the broadcast this minute is Lieutenant Colonel Daniel L. Davis, a military expert and host of Daniel Davis Deep Dive on YouTube. Thanks very much for being here with us on the broadcast. I have to begin by asking you for your reading of the situation right now. You know, we saw the burial of the late Iranian Supreme Leader delayed because of the war, and then came the renewed tensions while those last rites were underway and those ceremonies were underway. Now, where things stand, of course, Donald Trump saying that the MOU is dead, according to him. What do you think happens from here onwards to actually ensure that this spike in tensions does not result in all-out war?
Listen, the bottom line here is that we are nowhere near a resolution because the two sides are just absolutely entrenched on the opposite ends of the spectrum, and nobody is budging at all. The Iranian side has said since the time of the ceasefire in April all the way through into the signing of the MOU and to this day, they say we will remain in control of the Strait of Hormuz and we will never do anything differently. And that's why even in the MOU, the signature in paragraph 5, the critical one, said that Iran would remain in control administratively even during the 60 days, and it specifically said only for 60 days. So Iran says we're always going to have control of it. That's not even negotiable. We, on the other hand, seem to think that it's going to be open, and President Trump has many times said there will be no fees charged now or later, and that now then we're trying to, even during the 60 days, say that we want to control a southern corridor north of the Omani waters, which is not authorized us in the MOU, which the Iranian side calls out. And then you have this differentiation over the interpretation of paragraph 5, but nobody's willing to budge. And when President Trump says this about, I think the MOU is dead, I think the ceasefire is dead, then you eliminate any possibility that the other side is going to suddenly concede because they still have physical control over the Strait, and we've seen that in the numbers of ships in the last 48 hours. I think barely any, if I think only one or two I've seen confirmed through that southern corridor, which shows Iran is still in control. And as long as that is the case and we can't force it out of their hand, this is going to continue on until we, I guess, give in to what the Iranian side wants, or there's not going to be a resolution.
Right. So the Strait of Hormuz and the tussle over that waterway, of course, is a very significant aspect of what's happening here. Also, the symbolism and the messaging, really, that's coming in from the two sides. But let's also talk about the Lebanon issue, for example, which also brings us to Netanyahu's stance overall as far as the war and the conflict is concerned. Where do you think things would head from here onwards on that front?
Yeah, that's if the Strait of Hormuz was the only thing we had to worry about, it would be a nearly intractable situation. You could probably figure something out, but it's not the only one. The Lebanon issue is the Strait of Hormuz was paragraph 5. This is paragraph number 1 because that is the most emotionally important thing to the Iranian side. And they say they don't want just a ceasefire. They say there has to be the withdrawal of the Israelis completely out of Lebanon, totally, and an end to the war. And the Israeli side has no possibility, no intent, no willingness to even contemplate that. They say, to the contrary, they're going to have a permanent security belt in the southern part of the country. They've already driven out 200,000 Lebanese people in what they claim is now something, a security buffer. And until you get rid of that issue, there's not possibility for even solving this. So that is the biggest, I think, the most intractable thing. And so Strait of Hormuz, you can maybe work with. This one, it's just almost impossible to convince the Israeli military to withdraw under pressure from President Trump and therefore from Iran to withdraw from southern Lebanon. I just can't see politically how Netanyahu could ever do that. So I think we are literally in an absolute impasse.
All right, we're leaving it there for the moment, but thanks very much for joining us with those perspectives.
Thank you.
To stay up to speed with the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.